Welcome, everyone. If we can please take our seats, you are not going to want to miss this next fireside chat. Michael and Nolan, please come to the stage. Everyone, if you have not actually outside, there is a pop-up there, and you can make an NFT of your time here at CoinAgenda for free, very easily with Airwire. So you want to take a look at that. And then the other thing that you're going to want to do is you have met fabulous people. I love your shoes. You've met fabulous people. You've taken selfies with fabulous people. Please tag CoinAgenda on social.
Thank you, Adrian.
I wanted to shoe shame Michael.
Well, I was going to say, I would expect nothing less from the father of the video game than, kind of like some irreverent video gamey shoes. So we're still trying to hustle people up from lunch, but I figured having you after lunch would basically get people out of their coma, but I'm sure they'll sneak in as we're starting to talk, so we'll start out slowly. So Nolan, we met many years ago, and many years. Back, I remember when you were still kind of famed for having the largest house in Silicon Valley. I think it was the Folger Estate or something like that. And then when my wife started buying homes, you said, I remember you had a quote from me. You said, "You can tell the amount of a man's worries by the number of keys he carries." But but you've led, I think, one of the most fascinating careers of anybody in technology, and also an inspiration. Just that you're 78, I believe now, and just keep going. I mean, you're just I met a very inspiring figure in Monaco at our conference earlier. I think that was only about a couple weeks ago. We've been jamming them together. Bill Pollock, who has been running the same company, multi-billion-dollar, human resources company out of Australia, lives about a quarter of the year in Monaco. 92, he comes to the office every day. He's been running the same company now for 70 years, and he kind of looks at Warren Buffett and going, yeah, he's been doing kind of 50 years. And so he just, still has a happy hour every day. He walks without a cane. I met William Shatner, who's into NFTs now, and he's in his 90s and walks. I think something about just never retiring. There's actually statistics on this that you retire early, you die early. You keep and working, you live longer, and you're still working like you're 25. What motivates you in 2021? That's different than what motivated you in 1971, now that we're really the 50th anniversary almost of the video game?
Well, my blessing and my curse is curiosity. I get curious about stuff, and I have to figure it out. I just have to do it. It's not even an option for me. And this crypto world has been fascinating me, and I'm actually pissed off because I kind of think of myself as this guy that's sort of ahead of the curve. I am so far behind the curve on this thing that really, I'm so embarrassed. I mean, Brock Pierce gave me 2 Bitcoin in 14, 12. I mean, it was long enough ago that if I'd have just taken his advice, it would have been a really good thing for me. But, I think that even with that, if you look at the actual adoption of cryptocurrencies and things like that, we're still in the genesis phase. I mean, it very clearly is. And
in the halt and catch fire phase.
Exactly. Wasn't that a great series?
It was.
It was great fun. But not as good as the Squid Game. But, is there something about things that kill people playing a game that is interesting? I mean, like Hunger Games, bloody. Squid Game, bloody. Fascinating. Anyway, the thing I'm trying to figure out right now is where are the vertices? Where are the intersections? Like when tectonic plates collide, that's where all the interesting things happen. That's where all the earthquakes, that's where all the volcanoes happen. And so I'm always looking for what can I mash together to create something different.
Like technology and the world monetary system. Those are pretty big technology,
Very
tectonic plates.
And, you know, we know that the governments will try to screw things up. How can we keep them from doing that? You know, you know, and it's not a matter of co-opting with them. You know, you got to fight them. You know, I used to be a political hack. Then I became a kind of an independent, and then I kind of became an anarchist. You know, smash the state. No, you shouldn't. But anyway,
Well, they have now you can move up to crypto anarchist.
Yeah. But right now, I'm looking at, I mean, what's really happening is there is this translation from atoms to bits. And it's been happening for a long time. I mean, I used to have hundreds of CDs. I don't have any. You know, I've gone totally to bits. Now we have art, which has been sculpture, painting, what have you, all atoms. Now we have NFTs, bits. And so I've been trying to say, what is the next thing? And maybe it's nouns to verbs. So Zay and I, my partner in this NFT world, we're designing things that affect, that operate, that change, that are gamified the NFT space, surprise people on the NFT space. We've got some surprising stuff coming that I'm fascinated by, and I think everybody else will be too. But I really like things that are weird.
So you're mentioning nouns and verbs. Your thoughts on loot?
I think that when we start playing with loot, we start bumping into the gaming laws. And one of the things that I don't want to do in the twilight of my life is spend any of it in jail. So I try to be very, very careful. But there are ways you can do loot. You know, I don't know if I'm being too redundant here, but there are 3 tests in the Johnson Act, which is the reason that Bobby Kennedy got assassinated, but that's another story.
I'm referring to loot, the kind of words and game that's been sort of put out really within the last 2 months, where you're stringing things together and then making stories, and then it's become this really big thing. I mean, there have been a lot of things that just are inexplicable about what's created fast value, like 2016 or 17 rocks that are going for $500,000 now, whereas some other things that you would think from the same period, like some of the crypto kitties, that have just sort of stayed flat in value. So continue.
Well, Zay and I, a couple of years ago, created a board game that was driven by Amazon Echo. And you can still buy it on Amazon. It's called Saint Noir. And in it, you could interview suspects. And the suspects had to tell the truth. The perp could lie. And so you could decide who you're going to interview, what kind of questions you were going to ask. And it was a conversation with the Amazon Echo. And we won all kinds of awards on it. But it was, I sometimes think we're too far ahead of our time because it did okay, but it didn't blow the socks off, you know? And we're thinking we've got all this stuff. We maybe could NFT some of that. So now you can have a murder mystery that's on the blockchain. We don't know who did it, but it was ghastly. It was a dark and stormy night, and we can hardly expect that the world will ever be the same again. I'm sorry, I'm being a little dramatic.
No. We love it when you when you're Nolan. So I mean, my favorite time that I heard you speak many years ago, you were talking about your ill-fated venture. I mean, after obviously, I think everybody in the room knows that you know, gave Steve Jobs his first job, that you created Atari, that you created the video game industry, Pong, that you then went and created another multi-billion-dollar enterprise with Chuck E. Cheese. But you had an ill-fated brief foray into robotics, and basically what you said to the crowd, and it brought them to their knees, including me, was that the problem with robotics versus video games, that with video games, if you sort of like, you know, lose a life, nobody gets hurt. With robotics, you have the problem if it goes into mow the baby mode.
Yeah, mow the baby mode is really a bad idea. And
Can I quote you on that?
absolutely, every time. It's actually one of those truisms that will stand the test of time. But you got to understand that the blue screen of death on a video game, pretty innocuous. But when you have a 50-pound robot that crashes, sometimes it can be in a state where it's full on, no collision avoidance, nothing. And what happens if it's heading for a stairway just as somebody's coming up the stairway?
Hence the failure of Segway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's some weird stuff that you have to be careful of. I was in a robotics lab, actually at the Stanford AI lab, and there was a great big hole in a cinder block wall. And I said, "What's that?" I said, "Oh, it crashed and threw an end effector into the next county." So when you have a hand from a robot detach itself and go that far, I mean, these things can be powerful, and that's why...
Or a Tesla under automatic control.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I got to tell you, Elon Musk is my hero. He does some really cool shit. Those of you who don't have a Tesla, there's a thing called a toy box. And in the toy box, there is a fartomatic. And what it does is there's a speaker under every seat, and you can choose which seat it is, and it will fart there. My grandkids think it's the funniest damn thing the world's ever seen. Anyway, so having a fartomatic in your expensive car, it's got to be genius. I'd be willing to bet that that's sold all by itself a lot of cars.
It's an Easter egg. But so getting back to NFTs, I could interview Nolan for hours and we'd never get back to the main topic. But I want to stay somewhat with the topic of NFTs. So and then we'll get into NFT gaming. But with NFTs, it's interesting that, you know, we go through these cycles, and now all of a sudden, when I first started in technology in the early 90s, the big thing was the revolution of multimedia, and where you're able to get like a sound card on a computer and a, you know, very expensive CD-ROM drive that had just come down from like $10,000 to $1,000. And I remember going and having a client, if you remember MediaVision, they were sort of flaming up and down. We launched the first interactive movie, and we did a little PR stunt. We actually rented out the Directors Guild. and we showed this thing by Hyperbole Studios. They live in Miami now, and they're still doing cool stuff. But and it was this, kind of like thing where you'd go in, with words and verbs, and you would get to control where the story went. And it was like, by today's standards, very low res, very whatever. But by the standards of like just coming out of the 80s with like, Halt and Catch Fire type graphics, it was bleeding state of the art. It was Stan Cornyn and Min Yi who were the heads of it. I mean, they took literally the founder of like Time Warner New Media and the founder of Microsoft New Media and threw them in a room together and said make things, and then took a young kid called Alan Thiegason, who now runs all of the Google innovation, to sort of like manage the egos. It was a fun time. But we ended up getting over 250 reporters to show up to this. I mean, I've never had an event that had more reporters show up for it. And they were talking about all over town, the first interactive movie premiere, and everybody kept on asking, when does it hit the theater? It doesn't hit the theater. It's this shiny disc. And so I feel like we're getting in that phase with the NFTs. It's just like, only 1% of NFTs are kind of like, what is it? I think there's only 16,000 buyers on OpenSea. I mean, it's an infinitely small market who are people on Ethereum who know how to operate a MetaMask. And so when they say we're in this bubble, because we went from like 1 million in sales last February to 10 billion this quarter, that's still tiny compared to the $2.5 trillion crypto market cap or the hundreds of billions of dollars in the gaming industry. Your thought where entertainment, and I know you also have a passion for edutainment, are going to lead us in the next 2 or 3 years?
I think there are a couple of things that are important. Adoption generally follows a drop in friction. Ethereum has got a lot of friction right now. I mean, a lot of friction. And there are a couple of bright, shiny things that are coming that I think are going to be pretty good. And I've been watching Flow. I don't know if you guys have been watching this. It's from Dapper Labs.
So there's some Dapper investors in the room.
Okay. I like it a lot. It looks like it's going to at least drop the friction by a third, maybe a quarter. And every time you drop friction, you broaden the base. And that's a good step. The next thing that I think is important is I think static images on the NFTs are kind of insufficient. Zay, who is my partner, he basically did all the special effects for, Iron Man and Mission Impossible, and he's a genius. And he pranked me one day. And I was there, and all of a sudden, on my phone, I get this picture of one of my Atari games in the aisle of the Hollywood Bowl. I said, how the hell did he get that thing there? Well, what he'd done is he'd done an AR representation of the NFT that we did. So the NFTs that we dropped last week all have an augmented reality representation. So you can basically put stuff in the middle of your living room or take it to the Hollywood Bowl. Say, you should just raise your hand so they know.
You can stand up.
The guy,
Nolan's partner.
This guy is a genius, and like I always do, Al Alcorn actually did Bong, but I get all the credit. Zay does all the neat shit, but I get all the credit. It's kind of these wonderful things, and he hasn't figured it out yet. Anyway, no. But now, we're doing a bunch of stuff with the Atari IP. Imagine with the augmented reality that now you can put asteroids in your living room. And you can stand in the middle of your living room and shoot asteroids. And it shoots back at you. And it doesn't kill you. It just wounds.
And are those objects then that interact with the NFT space, or is it standalone AR?
We're not sure. Right now, you know, Ethereum has a problem. It has a stack of 24 kilobits. That's nothing. But in some ways, I've trained my whole life for this. Do you know how big a typical cartridge for the Atari 2600 was? 2 kilobits. So all of a sudden, we did some really amazing games. Over 200 games, less than 2 kilobits. So I'm thinking maybe we can do some weird shit there. I don't know.
Well, the other thing also is obviously, besides Flow and Ethereum, you do have an awful lot of EVMs that are just, going on speed and work with MetaMask. I mean, you got Phantom, which has been going crazy lately. You've got Polygon, which a couple weeks ago actually passed Ethereum in terms of usage. And they're faster, better, cheaper. Even Binance Smart Chain is EVM, so if programming there. And then you got Solana, which is not EVM compatible, but does seem to be getting a lot of traction with some of the new gaming platforms. Again, Michael Wagner, Star Atlas, made a big splash. He was supposed to be here today, but he was hung up in Miami. He will be in Puerto Rico. So I think another thing, and of course, Jor was on a panel earlier from representing Bank and Prime Trust. So it seems right now, if you're looking even at the very, kind of low gas, low friction, fast flow blockchain, not on MetaMask yet, although I think it is on their path. But most of the NBA, top shots that they sold were with credit cards. And so it seems right now that the first layer of friction is you own an NFT, but somebody else is storing it for you, and you still get to say, okay, can you put that on my homepage just so I can show off that I have a CryptoPunk or a Garbage Pail Kid?
Yeah. What if I could do some things with CryptoPunks that were really fun? And I've said too much. Never mind.
Okay, we'll have to watch this space soon. So, what if you could do some stuff with Zunks? That's like a really cheap version of CryptoPunks.
If you go big, I'm a big believer in go big or go home. And so, if I'm going to mess with somebody, I'm going to mess with CryptoPunks.
Okay.
But that's just me. I'm sorry. Though, we've got, actually, Zay and I have one big project that I think we'd like to get about $5 million worth of smart money to invest in it. And so if anybody wants to come and be part of this crazy thing, incidentally,
we have about $5 billion under management in this room, so keep speaking.
Well, yesterday was St. Crispin's Day. And so if you're aware of the Battle of Agincourt and the bards Henry V, it's the Band of Brothers. And so what would be great fun is for us in this room to band together and create some really weird shit and spend some serious bucks chasing it. So if anybody wants to come and join us in this quest, give us a call. I'm easy to get in hold of. My best email is nolan@bushnell.io. The only thing that's a little tricky is the IO thing. The rest of it is just me. Yeah.
That's great. And you're always ahead of the industry in fascinating ways, and in often ways that I didn't see coming. But then I mean, Steve Jobs, who you famously employed, and then decided not to join Apple because you weren't quite sure about like single-purpose computers. But that's
no. It wasn't. What Michael is being kind about is I was offered a third of Apple computer for $50,000.
Oh.
And I turned it down.
Grown.
Now I've regretted it, but the point is that at that point, Steve Jobs was a very, very rough gem, and I actually think me not investing was actually really good for him for the following reason. The guy who came up and became the partner was a guy named Mike Markkula, and he came in as the first president of Apple, and he trained Steve into how to become a good CEO. I had other stuff going. I was doing Chuck E. Cheese at the time, so I couldn't have done that. And so I think the outcome would have been very different if I'd have invested. That's what I tell myself.
Fantastic. So we have time for about 2 or 3 questions. Actually, whoever wants to carry around the mic.
So if you turned down Bitcoin and Apple, is there anything else you've turned down recently
That's a great question. What
know,
did you pass on that we
was
should
a
all
statement.
buy?
That was a statement.
I think that turning down a third of Apple for $50,000, it's really hard to top that one.
Hello. Thank you for speaking today. Just wanted to ask, where do you think the ceiling is for the NFT market cap? Do you think that we still have a long way to go in terms of these valuations and growth that we're seeing, or like how do you see the space evolving in terms of market access and liquidity?
I think that fiat is on the trajectory to have some significant inflation in the next 2 years. I think that's going to drive an awful lot of liquidity into crypto. And it may be a deluge, actually, because we've been in a low inflation, low problem environment for 10, 15 years. I mean, I remember when the word stagflation was on everybody's lips, and everybody was looking for ways to hedge the fiat disaster that was going on. I think we're highly probabilistic to have that same situation happening. And so I think crypto is going to experience a very, very strong demand on the demand side.
And the answer in the 70s was gold, and it went up 5 or 6x over the decade. And Paul Tudor Jones, who made a fortune on that, now says that Bitcoin is the fastest horse in the race. And
no question. Yeah.
One question over here.
Enzo Villani from Alpha Segment.
Hello. What is your thoughts on the concept of actually play-to-earn games? And like, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, right now we're seeing that there are groups of teams of people making more money playing a video game than like working at like a call center or doing other gig economy type jobs. What do you think is going to happen?
I believe that whenever you can monetize eyeballs, there's somebody going to figure out how. And Zay and I are actually consultants on a play-to-earn construct. If you'll watch it, it's going to be called Moxie. You haven't heard about it yet, but you will shortly. And I think it will be the answer to what we think the play-to-earn model is moving into the future. There's another thing. It's a stepchild of play-to-earn, but it's proof of score. And it turns out that games have a very, very sloppy handicap system, if at all. To have really, really good game conflicts, a handicapping system that is not fudgeable, that is immutable. That's a nice crypto word. We think that maybe one of the more interesting things is to create real handicapping. I mean, I like to play Go, the Japanese-Chinese board game, 19 by 19 matrix. And it has a wonderful handicapping system, so I can play players that are very, very much stronger than me, or much, much weaker than me, and still have a great time. That really doesn't exist in most other games. And that's because everybody can fudge. Even golf handicaps are they're a long way from immutable. And so I think that that's another area that the blockchain and it's not proof of stake, it's not play to earn, it's proof of score. And I think that's going to be important.
I guess I'll have one question, because I know I had a lot before, but I'm going to ask one question just as a follow-up to what Enzo had asked. Will the first sort of like unicorn, well, I guess it's actually already, but like Deca Unicorn or whatever, be something where an A-level game, a Fortnite-type game that enables a play-to-earn? And in that case, when you have hundreds of millions of users, who are the buyers? They're going to have to be outside of the gaming world.
I always have this is going to sound sexist, so I shouldn't do it. My wife says, whenever you say this is going to sound sexist, don't say anything at all. But
we love you. Say it.
The first-person shooters are highly dominated by male players. And I think a unicorn has to have the characteristic of being evenly distributed across the sexes. Just one man's opinion.
Great. I guess last question.
Last question. Who wants it? Hand. See the hand? You want to ask a question? Raise those hands fast.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Really interesting talk. So I have a question sort of about tokenomics, and I would love to get your thoughts on, really what you see as sort of the optimal tokenomic model for play to earn, or where you'd like to see it go. Obviously Chuck E. Cheese had sort of a tokenomics model on.
I've been in the token business for a long time.
Right, exactly. And you pioneered this idea of, you play to earn, right? You get tokens, and then there's a shop where, in theory, you can only buy the stuff in that shop with these tokens, and 100% of the tokens are burned, removed from the supply. Right, so I am really curious, now that we have this interoperable ecosystem with all of these, composable pieces, and what, you can do with tokenomics now, how you're thinking about it in the context of play to earn.
You've just hit on one of the big conundrums. The tokenomics of Chuck E. Cheese were somewhat rapacious. That is, it's not often that you can get people to spend $10 and $20 to get tokens, to get tickets, to win a whistle. Chuck E. Cheese's cost of goods sold for their tokenomics was about 10%. It just seems wrong, but we did it. And And so I believe that, yeah, young kids are young and they're dumb, and we took advantage of that. As you get a little older, I think that we're not going to be able to get away with those kind of economics. And so how we price the ecosystem and get the value proposition correct, I think it's going to be hard. And every time I wake up, I have a different solution, none of which are very good. And so we'll TBD, to be determined. I think that it will be figured out, and I think that there will be some false starts and some crazy stuff going on. And maybe it will be a, you know, this is the part that's so great about the world. This is a journey. You know, we don't know how it's going to end. We're curious about it. And to the extent that we can be part of the directors or the docents or the crypto punks, I don't know, you know. I really want to go to the Weird Apes Yacht Club. You know, isn't that, you know, what they've promised right now, I just love. And the other part is, how many of you seen Bandersnatch, the Black Mirror thing? Why hasn't there been another one of those? It was cool. Anyway, I'll leave you with that.
The legendary Nolan Bushnell. Give it up, everyone.
Oh.
Woo! And we know you'll be contributing and finding those answers until the game done signs happen. So hopefully many, many decades from now. Thank you so much. All right.
You know,
Okay.
Michael, you're a legend in your own mind.
Go get some money from the crowd.
Thanks.